Hello there. It's been a little while since I talked about League of Legends, but I've been playing it a lot lately, so I feel inclined to talk about it. And specifically, I feel like talking about Gwen, the next champion to be released, who had her abilities revealed earlier today, and I feel like there's some stuff that's worth discussing. Every time I've discussed a champion on this channel, fully enough, they've had several parts of their kit removed because they end up being completely obnoxious at launch. I'm maybe not the most worried about that with regard to Gwen, but I do think there's some potential for her to be very, very obnoxious for some people, and will probably have a couple things removed at some point down the line. So, her passive is actually incredibly mundane, given that I've said that. It's just that she deals magic damage on hit. It's very, very basic. The only things that are really notable about it are the fact that it deals damage based on a percentage of her health, which means that she's incentivized to build health, and the fact that several of her abilities state that they also apply it. So what this functionally means is that she has health scalings on her entire kit, which I can only hope won't lead to an abuse case scenario where she just builds tank and still deals obnoxious amounts of damage. I think this is more directed at the fact that there is health on quite a few ability power items in Season 11, but we'll have to see. There's a lot of champions that end up requiring safeguards against their building just, fully into tank items. Characters like Pyke and Echo have had problems with this in the past. Her Q is a cone damaging ability that deals true damage in the center, and it deals damage a number of times equal to the number of times she has auto-attacked recently plus 2, up to a total of 6. So in order to get the most out of this ability, she has to commit to a fight and be there for a reasonable period of time, which I think is actually quite fair. I think this ability is actually it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I don't think there's really anything objectionable about this. I'm sure some people will kick up a stink about the fact that it deals true damage, but like it's really not as ubiquitous as like say Reddit would tell you it is. I don't think this ability is going to be a problem. What I think might be a problem is her W, which seems to be the centerpiece of her entire kit. It's a circle that she can cast that appears around her that gives her armor and magic res while she's inside of it, and enemies that are outside of it cannot hit or even target her with attacks or abilities. So it's a quite powerful form of soft invulnerability. And it also makes her crowd control immune, which I think is probably the more worrisome component of it. There are other abilities like this in the game, most notably Xin Zhao's ultimate, that probably shares the most similarities with this, but Xin Zhao is still susceptible to crowd control while he's inside of it. And, well, I say while he's inside of it as though Xin Zhao can move out of it, he simply can't. Gwen, actually, she can move outside of it, but the first time she attempts to move outside of it, it follows her and resets its position so that she's in the center. Yeah, so this is definitely going to be something that she is playing around at all times. But it also means that she is going to be fairly safe against range. is really the very vague but probably the most fitting way I can put it. I think that this type of ability would be more fair if it were on a relatively immobile character, as abilities like this tend to be. Stuff like Vladimir's W or Xin Zhao's ultimate, like Vladimir has a single movement speed steroid on his entire kit. That's all the maneuverability he has, and debatably he doesn't even have full control over when it triggers because it's not on a button press, it's on a delay after he's cast his Q twice. And Xin Zhao has a single targeted dash, that's all of his mobility, that's all he gets. So there are a lot of constraints on the use cases of both his mobility and his safety from his ability that is similar to this one. This, however, is a lot more freeing, and I think that it, combined with the fact that she has a seemingly low cooldown dash, will spell some problems regarding people just finding her generally annoying to play as. So her E is a short dash. It's long enough to go over walls. It's like the range of like Fiora's Q or Graves' E, so plenty usable. And it's also a steroid. It gives her increased range, speed, and on-hit magic damage for her attacks. for 4 seconds. And during this time, it says that if she attacks an enemy, it refunds 50% of the ability's cooldown, but it's not clear whether that means attacking once will reduce 50% of the total cooldown, or whether every single attack she lands within the duration reduces the current cooldown by 50%. It could be either. I suppose we'll have to wait until she hits the PvE. But the fact that there is a cooldown reduction component on this ability means that there is probably some potential for her to cast it quite frequently, which means that she is going to be a fairly mobile champion, as well as one who has this soft form of invulnerability that makes her basically completely untouchable outside of a range of, let's generously call that 400 to 500 units, which is not a... It's not necessarily a lot of space to work within, I suppose, but it favors her specifically against ranged champions. I think that if Gwen ever becomes a problem, it's precisely because these two forms of survivability are they're very good together. Most champions don't get two different forms of safety that are as different as this. And one of the things about safety mechanisms in League of Legends is that they work well with redundancy. What's better than one shield? Two shields. What's better than mobility? More mobility. What's better than just having mobility? Well, having mobility and also the ability to just not have to worry about anything past a certain range of you. And as it turns out, Summoner's Rift is quite large, and there are a lot of things that are outside this range at any given time. So, yeah. Even if you compare it to similar abilities, Xin Zhao's ultimate is an ultimate, and this is a basic ability, and Xin Zhao's ultimate doesn't make him immune to crowd control either, so even if he just ults and flashes away, you can still chase him down using long-range crowd control like Jin's W or Ashe's ultimate. So there are ways of dealing with it, whereas with this, if Gwen flashes away and pushes W and maybe E's a couple times, she's long gone. Like, you ain't catching that. That's just not happening unless your name is like Rammus or Udyr or something, you know? Someone who's very purpose-built to engage in a long-range and long-duration chase. Ultimately, I think that if there are problems with Gwen, it's going to stem from the fact that she is both mobile and has access to this. So her ultimate is very reminiscent of Irelia's old ultimate, actually. It's a multicast skill shot ability. Where it differs from Irelia's old ultimate is that she has to auto-attack after each cast in order to gain access to the next one, which it might seem like a big functional difference, but in terms of actual practical purposes, that's actually not that different from how Irelia's old ultimate would be used, because one of the main things about Irelia that you might remember if you've been playing the game for long enough to remember her old kit is that the first item she bought was always Sheen, and that wasn't just because of her Q, which she still has, but also because her ultimate counted as 4 separate ability casts, which meant that if you staggered out the casting, you got 4 Sheen procs, which added up to quite a lot of damage that early in the game. So yeah, it was not that different to how Gwen is basically going to end up using her ultimate, and I do think this means that she's a very strong user of something like Lichbane, or if she ends up with a more bruisery build, maybe she builds Divine Sunderer. I'm not really that sure about that, though, if we're being honest. But who knows, you know? Have to wait until we see what the numbers are. So, yeah. This ability, I also think, is actually not something that's too terribly worth worrying about. Like, ultimately, it's none of the damaging abilities on Gwen's kit that I think might potentially make her into a problem. It's just the fact that she has 2 separate powerful means of not taking damage. That's kind of the main crux of the discussion here, is that when you show off an ability that shrugs off like the vast majority of the output of the rest of the cast, like you're gonna make me a little worried. So yeah, I suspect that what will probably be done to this ability within let's say 6 months of her release is that it will have the crowd control immunity removed, or maybe she'll be made targetable even if she still can't be hit from the outside. Like, I think that some of the functionality will be stripped away because I think there's, quite frankly, entirely too much going on here. I don't think it's so egregious that she can't have this ability. I just think that its current description combined with the fact that she has her E, which is, as demonstrated by the trailer, a dash that can have a potentially quite short cooldown, will make her basically the centerpiece in any fight that involves her. Like, it's going to be like top priority to deal with her, which is a problem that we're kind of already facing with Viego, where you kind of have to kill Viego first, because the moment he kills anyone or gets an assist on anyone, he can regenerate a crap load of his health and basically get a reset on all of his abilities in the form of gaining access to a completely new set of abilities. Funny that these two champions are also being released back to back, and I'm kind of warning about one, something which is already true of the other. Yeah. As for what our role is, I think that this kit screams that they are designing her to be a mid or a top laner, but I'm going to try her in the jungle, because I try everyone in the jungle. Having no crowd control might hurt her in the jungle, because, as it turns out, fighting over crab is something that most champions like being able to do, and having hard crowd control genuinely quite helps with that. But there are plenty of characters that don't have hard crowd control that still function. Shyvana is still a plenty workable character. Kha'Zix is also plenty workable still. Like, hard crowd control helps, but it's not necessarily mandatory. Anyway, so yeah, that's pretty much most of my major thoughts on this character thus far, but we'll have to see how things pan out. This is going to be a release skin, Space Groove. I do not care at all for this theme, so I most likely am not going to buy it, but it is what it is. Anyway, that's all I've got for now. I'm going to stop now to prevent descending into inane rambling. Thanks for watching. Toodaloo.